So, good morning,
Mhm.
everyone. Welcome all the panelists and speakers here on this forum. So, this actually the Federation for World Academics is a pioneering organization that provides a platform for all the academicians from all across the globe to come to a common platform to share experiences and knowledge sharing, so that everyone benefits in this knowledge world and gain excellence among the academia arena. Now, the FWAA has been actually serving as a platform for sharing, innovating, and learning experiences from varied thematic sectors and institutes, and gives everyone an opportunity to learn from each other's experiences. The new ideas, new concepts, thoughts to be worked upon are all networking and sharing are some of the intangible gains that the participants benefit from these forums, conclaves, and workshops. So, in this series of the workshops that FWA has been having, this workshop will be opening up the thoughts towards mitigating the challenges post pandemic with the industry integration. So, I would like to introduce the Ford School of Management, which is renowned and ranked 26th in the country by NIRF for maintaining and growing as an eminent institution in the higher education industry. The institute takes pride in shaping the career of more than 6,000 students since the last 29 years in the pursuit of higher education and excellence. So we have with us Dr. Rajneesh Chauhan, the Dean of Corporate Relations from the renowned institute, to moderate the session for all of us today. And we have other eminent speakers also from the industry who will throw light on the topic today. So handing over the floor to Dr. Rajneesh Chauhan.
Thank you, Vinita. Thank you for the nice words and greetings to everyone. Good morning to everyone on this industry webinar. We already have a good many number of attendees. In fact, I see a number which is almost close to 200, and the number is still increasing. It is actually heartening to know this particular number, and it gives me great pleasure to welcome all of you to this industry webinar. We have students as attendees, more than 200 of them. A very warm welcome to all the students from the first year and also the students from the second year MBA also. We have faculty members across all the academic areas in this webinar. A very warm welcome to all my esteemed colleagues, and we have esteemed members from the industry also. A very warm welcome to all of you, and of course, we have the privileged and respected members, speakers on this particular panel. A very warm welcome to you. It's an honor and a privilege to have all of you in the panel, sir. A very warm welcome to all of you. In fact, we have Mr. Dharam Rikshit from Hero Motocorp. You are the head of HR over there. A very warm welcome. Mr. Harjeet Khanduja, who happens to be a Senior Vice President of HR from Reliance Jio. A very good morning to you, sir, and a very warm welcome. Mr. Inba Rajan Palaniswamy from Verse Innovation. You're the business head over there, and in fact, you know your organization better with the name Daily Hunt. A very warm welcome to you as well. And Mr. Rajiv Williams, who's the corporate head of CSR at Jindal Steel, Stainless Steel. A very warm welcome to you, sir. And of course, Mr. Srinivas Reddy from MetLife. You happen to be the director of HR at MetLife. So a very warm welcome to all of you. It's good to see all of you, in fact, this Saturday morning. The past 18 months of this pandemic, it has touched all of us. In fact, to be very frank, touched is probably an understatement. It has actually also, and mankind combined also, you have genuinely been transformed during this particular pandemic. And when it comes to even this transformation that I'm talking about, this transformation was unique in so many respects. And the reason I say so is because, if I were to look at, for example, the speed of this particular transformation, which was triggered by the pandemic, well, the speed was tremendous. In fact, the transformation was overnight. The word changed overnight. The transformation was at lightning speed. Not only speed, the transformation has actually been radical. It was not a superficial transformation by any respect. It was an extremely radical and a drastic transformation. And in fact, likewise, if you even look at the extent of transformation, well, the extent of transformation has actually been wide also and extremely, extremely deep also. There's no aspect of society or for that matter business ecologies that we work in and day out that has not been transformed, whether it is business, academia, whatever it is. And businesses have changed business models have changed, the way we work has changed, our outlooks have changed, our priorities have changed, and to that extent, everything has changed. And then, in fact, when we come across this particular topic, which starts with the word post-pandemic, okay, I'm not sure at this point that whether I really want to say that whether we have crossed the Rubicon. Though, of course, given the fact that humanity, at the end of the day, we are always optimists, and we would like to, be optimist about it that pandemic has more or less gone by, but still there are those nooks, corners, little bit apprehensions here and there, so on and so forth, which make us probably believe that, probably are we throwing the caution to the wind, so on and so forth. Okay. But anyway, for the sake of this particular discussion, and if post-pandemic is what we are talking about, post-pandemic also is a very interesting phase, and interesting phase in the sense that, one thing I think all of us need to realize is that for the past 18 months, there were a lot of changes which happened, and probably this also the fact that what it was pre-pandemic, is that going to be there post-pandemic? Maybe a little bit here and there, but not in a big way for sure. Okay. Pandemic has actually brought us face to with a new normal altogether. It was a different normal altogether, and we to that extent have got used to a different way of working, so on and so forth. So whether it is in terms of are we going back to those pre-pandemic days, probably that is not going to happen anytime soon, because the pandemic phase has actually exposed us to a different normal altogether, and this particular normal is here to continue. Many of the changes that we have actually seen coming into effect during the pandemic are very much going to be here to stay, whether we like it or we don't like it. Okay. And to give a couple of examples, for example, if I have to give an example of the efficiencies of digitization, the pandemic, the moment it came in, it exposed us to a lot of digital stuff around us. Pandemic saw a huge digital push all around us in all aspects of societies, businesses, so on and so forth. And it was the digitization. And for example, we no longer unnecessarily, if we are at cameras and speak in person with each other, we are doing this entire thing virtual, right? There's a lot of efficiency which have been brought up by digitization, courtesy the pandemic, and post-pandemic also these efficiencies are going to continue. We as mankind, businesses, societies have got used to these kind of efficiencies, right? Take another thing, for example, post-pandemic, is our work from home scenario, for the matter, work from anywhere scenario likely to change? Well, it is not likely to change. We have it's very continue ahead. Recently, the 2025 model, then the actual going to probably at any point in time is not going to be there in the office. Continuation of the same thing, pandemic world exposed us to a lot of digital skills. I always tell my students, you need to bump up your digital skill. Prior to the pandemic, people used to say that for success in life, you need two IQs, okay, two Qs, which used to be fundamentally the intelligent quotient, IQ, and as the HR practitioners and the psychologists said, that the equally important is emotional quotient also. And the pandemic, I think, has brought in this particular fact that, look here, it is not a success is not a focus of the function of only IQ plus standing for intelligent. So okay, so now actually success is IQ plus EQ plus digital quotient. So these are the kind of things which are very much to stay over here. And likewise, during the pandemic, we got exposed to disruptions. We learned how to navigate disruptions as individuals, also as society, also in businesses, also. And pandemic also, are disruptions going anywhere soon? Where they are not. Okay, the disruptions are very much there. We have this disruption puts out over there. Chips are not coming anytime sooner. Our automobile supply chains have got affected. So disruptions also we will continue to be living even in case of post-pandemic scenarios. These are the kind of things which have actually happened during the pandemic and are definitely going to continue post-pandemic also. Okay. And these macro trends, the look from a point of view of students, we've got almost 200 of students out over here. And this is around about the placement season, which is actually starting over here. And if you look at the cost of recruitment, I always tell the students, and in fact, that is going to continue into this particular year also, that for the corporates, the cost of recruitment has gone down terribly. You know, previous what used to happen is probably we'll spend a day or two in Delhi, interview people, talk to people. All of a sudden, the cost of recruitment has gone down like anything for the corporates. And having said that, for the students, well, the flip side for the students, actually, all of you, for you who can hear me, is that, you know, the corporates are going to be more choosy. Previous schools they used to go down to for recruitment, but now sitting at one place itself, they probably have a reach which expands to many more B schools rather that would be possible for them, you know, in person B schools at a time, or a dozen of B schools out over there, right? So the corporates are going to be much more choosy. And another trend which is coming up very close, especially that you know, we have always been hearing about the rise of the gig economy and the rise of the gig workers, so on and so forth. And all of a sudden, corporates have actually started coming out over there, giving them contracts. You know, they're talking about contracts which are to the extent of 6 months, 9 months, and extendable, so on and so forth. Now, so very interesting, you know, these days in terms of, you know, what happened pre-pandemic, what happened during pandemic, and actually happens pandemic. And such eminent people on the panel would not take much time, and to that extent, I think I'll pass on the baton to these eminent panel from the industry, and they have very relevant insights which they can share with us also, with each other also, and with all the students. Much ado, I pass the baton to Mr. Dharam Rakshit, who actually happens to be the head of HR from Hero MotoCorp. And welcome, Mr. Dharam Rakshit, husband of the Rooted Voice. So over to you, Mr. Dharam Rakshit, please.
So very good morning to everyone. And I find the thing is a very pleasant morning because the just winter is taking place. Okay, and the sun is not so hot, and it is a relaxed morning also for me also. Very well built up the topic, Professor Rajnish. So let me congratulate you and the entire academia first, because when the pandemic actually happened, I always believed that the academia is very orthodox in adopting the new ways of working. And I immediately realized that the entire academia shifted to the digital mode. So this was the first transition I witnessed in the world of academia, because which I always believed it was very orthodox. So you proved me wrong. So let me congratulate you all guys. But what actually happened by doing this way thing? An interesting piece of the things when I was trying to take a deep dive. Some interesting insight emerged to me. Just go back to the previously the days of the 1750 or something, when the actually the industrial revolution start taking place, and we call it the industry 1.0. So what happened? Previously the entire craftsmanship shifted to the mass production, and the people who were doing the work at home, they moved to the other places. Their workplace changed from the home to the other places. They moved to the factories. And this brought the entire change in the ecosystem. So your attire changed, your way of working changed, your way of interaction changed, your way of living and putting, everything changed, because you were going to work in an environment which was the much and more densely populated, and you were meeting with a lot of the strangers. You were making a new friends. And industry 4.2, when it started taking shape, what actually the pandemic came and what we witnessed, going back to the past. So again, the same thing what has happened. Now we are telling that you have to shift from the workplace to the home. That's the major shift which is happening. And again, the entire transformation is, I am finding this thing, the transformation is taking place where we are telling the people, okay, operate out of the work from home. And what they are going to miss: socialization, peer learnings, the networking, lot of the other factors also. Because now you see this thing, if I would have been invited in the formal setup, perhaps I would have come in the formal getup. But right now I'm relaxed. I'm wearing a t-shirt and interacting with you from my own cozy corner of from my home. That's the comfort what I am getting. But at the same time, what I'm missing to meet my good friend Harjeet in person. Although many of time we have come on the screen, we have seen each other on the screen, but we have never been able to interact in the physical kind of the setup. That the part is missing. If that is the I am missing, the same thing is being missed by the students as on date. And when they are missing that very piece of the things, what there else they are missing? Because over the last 1.5 years, we had done the campus equipment, the virtual equipment, another kind of thing. We inducted the people. And many of the management trainee or the GET, we have not been able to meet in person so far. And what I'm realizing that they are missing a big piece of their life, because in the initial days, the peer learning, the socialization, the real understanding how the chemistry of your workplace, how the factories works, how the corporate works, how what kind of the connect has to happen, who are the relevant people, who are the stakeholders, those kind of things are important there, and these people are going to miss, and they are missing that kind of things. So that is one of the biggest question mark which comes, how we are going to bridge the gap. Second, this big thing like this thing, although we have number of time we have discussed about the new normal base of work, the work from home and something, and that I actually started giving me a lot of fatigue. Because what is the new normal? We decide what is the normal. Nothing called the new normal, old normal, or something like this. The thing. So, but I find the thing is, let's try to find out the brighter side of the entire things. So, what has happened? This entire arrangement has given me the access to the global talent. Now, what I used to think, like, okay, when I have to recruit someone, let's go to the campuses in the near vicinity of the places where we are operating. Then after what we thought, okay, let's go to the pan India, no problem. And now we are thinking, why not to have to hunt the global talent also? But what is a big deal? I am hiring anyone virtually. The person is also joining virtually to me, and he or she is also delivering the job, sitting back at his or her home. So whether the home is in India or outside of India, it hardly matters to me. So the entire thing is becoming the workplace, the place geography agnostic, the place agnostic, and that's a very important piece of coming. So from the industry side, what I am finding, there is no dearth of the talent. At the same time, the problem with the students in the academia, they have to prepare themselves to become a global talent, not a local talent. And the question comes before the faculties and all the institute, management institute, or the technical institute. Are they preparing their people, their students, to compete locally or globally? That's the bigger question which has come. And if they are preparing their talent to compete locally, I think they are not doing justice. So they need to prepare their talent globally, and they have also an opportunity here. And opportunities are coming. If I am finding that I can access the global talent, at the same time, academia can access the global capabilities powerhouse. Good institutes across the world, you can tie up, you can learn their good practices, bring their faculties, have the immersion program with them, expose your students to the global environment, along with the certain industries which are the part of the global have the global team. Try to find an internship of your students with those very companies. Give the exposure to your students a global working environment, because your working environment is not your cozy corner. Now your working environment is entire globe. And this is giving me an opportunity. This pandemic has given me this opportunity because previously our mind was very closed. We used to think from a very closed mindset. Okay, this is the best institute in India. Let's go. Whether IIM or the Excel or the TIS or XIS or whatever kind of things. But today I have the opportunity to go. And similarly, the opportunity for other institute also to approach to the global employers, not to restrict themselves with the local employers. That's the one thing what I am finding is thing. Interesting part, we need to add what is the requirement at this juncture to break the stereotyping. Stereotyping in the entire curriculum. In breaking the stereotyping, the way you used to connect back with the previously back with the industry or your prospective employers. Because you see this thing during the period of time, how many unicorns have been given the birth in India, and these unicorns are coming not from the very old industry house. They are all of the new people, young people. They are bringing the powerhouse for the new economy, and where you can actually connect and can learn the entire piece of the thing. Because Professor Aziz was mentioning about the gig worker, the platform worker, those kind of the people are looking for those kind of opportunity. Okay, how the innovation can be driven, and there I find this the thing. The academia, the students have to play a bigger role, because somehow I personally feel myself I have become old. My thought process are old, but the new generation can actually break this kind of stereotyping. And most of the kind of things are today what we are seeing from the last couple of the years. A lot of the stereotyping has been broken. So this is the time when actually I will tell like this thing is a ransome movement. It can become a ransome movement for the entire academia and industry also. This is the opportunity lying in before us. Let us catch up this way opportunity. Don't miss the opportunity. It comes very rarely in the life cycle of the entire ecosystem. So those are my initial thought. I hand over back to Professor Rajneesh. Thank you. Once if I am given the opportunity, I will come back again.
But yeah. Mr. Dharam, thank you very much. It was a very insightful viewpoint that you shared, and as you rightly said, the playing field has actually become global now, and the academy also, to that extent, they need to prepare the students for the global playground and no longer only for the local requirements. And yes, it is definitely what you're saying is right. So probably we'll come back to you again after some time. Let's pass on the baton to Mr. Harjeet Khanduja for his viewpoints, and then maybe we can have a more free and open discussion, right? Mr. Harjeet Khanduja, over to you, sir.
Thank you, Professor Rajneesh. In fact, yesterday night I was awake till 2 o'clock and I was preparing the points that what will I speak in this seminar. And whatever I prepared, you spoke in the first few minutes. So, frankly speaking, I don't have any points now. So,
I'm sure you still have.
so what I will do is I will dwell on stories. So, what happened when the pandemic struck? Worst hit industry was airlines. Like it was that bad struck that 9/11, it was not having that much impact which COVID had. The bookings were down by 85%, and all the airlines were struggling. Then there is an airline called Delta, which is like the most profitable airline in the industry as of now. You know what Delta did? Delta found out that customers are afraid of flying. So they said, if you want to fly, what we will do is we will not sell our middle seats. So you will not find anyone on the middle seats. You fly with us. And you know, the pandemic happened somewhere in March. Actually, the burst of pandemic happened somewhere in March. And from 1st April, Delta, which is a 90,000 people organization, which runs 5,400 flights a day, that organization was able to implement this change in, say, a 15-20 days period. So when Dharam was talking about that we need to change academia, this was one story which came to my mind, that if an airline like Delta can change such a big organization in just 15 to 20 days, then what is stopping us as academia to change fast? And let me tell you why there is a need to change. And I'm not talking about that your course material is good. I really respect it, the kind of things you teach. I will tell you where the opportunity is. As of now, what is happening is, if you go to the talent market is so hot. People are taking offers of 40%, 50%, and thing is, industry is giving those kind of offers because there are a lot of new companies which are opening up. A lot of investment is coming in those companies. They are hiring people at atrocious costs. And suddenly you will find one day industry will say, I don't need these people at this cost at which they are offering themselves. Who will they turn themselves to? Can academia be an option that you say, you need technology guys, you need the key positions which we hire, uh, we will give that to you. And if you are ready in say next 3 to 6 months investing in your students in such a manner, this is going to be a huge opportunity, which if academia can exploit, then definitely many from the industry will come, integrate, and partner with academia. It will be like the golden period of campus placement. You can see it like that. That is how I see the opportunity. Look, what happened was how we sense the future. Like Professor Rajneesh said, what has happened in the pandemic is, one is our way of working has changed. Most of the people are say working from not even their home, they're working from their hometown, living with their parents and living with the kind of comfort they want to live in, and still they're able to work because of the infrastructure which is there. Now thing is, I remember what Peter Drucker said. Peter Drucker once said that it is not the change which is the problem during the change. The problem is our way of working, our old way of working, when we try to apply a logic of the past to future, then future doesn't happen. All of you must be seeing Netflix, right? Do you know how Netflix started as a company? Netflix and Blockbuster, these were two companies which used to, um, you can say, run stores of video cassettes, and they used to send video cassettes or CDs to customers that there is a new movie which has come, so you can rent it from us. And they used to mail those video CDs and video cassettes to their customers. Now, Netflix, when they came into this game, their name should have been Mailflix because they were mailing the movies to everyone. But they said, no, we will not keep the name as Mailflix. We want to be Netflix because we will run on internet someday. They applied the logic of the future. And what Blockbuster did was, Blockbuster said, we will have stores and we will not go by this internet way. Who will watch movies in the internet? Nobody is going to watch movies in the internet. Any which ways, it is so slow. Blockbuster, which was a $6 billion company with 90,000 employees, closed down in 2010. And you know where Netflix is right now. So apply the logic of the future for the future, then you will be successful. And that is what industry should do. That is what academia should do. I see there is a opportunity for industry and academia to come together at this point in time and invest in especially the future generation. I truly believe in future generation because they are smarter than us, like Dharam was saying. And I will prove it to you if I get a chance uh, later in this uh, seminar. But I believe that's what I have to say. And back to Professor Rajneesh.
Thank you, Mr. Harjeet. Thank you very much indeed for that very nice viewpoint that you had to share. In fact, if I may ask you a question, and since you started out by saying that at this point in time, the companies, the way they were willing to give money to talent, 40% increase, so on and so forth. I mean, what's a bigger challenge for the industry right now, especially in case of concerns like Reliance Jio? Is it talent attraction or is it talent retention as of now? Which one of the two is the bigger challenge right now?
Look, this is an industry-wide phenomena. It is not a company-wide phenomena.
Mm-hmm.
This is like if there are 100 shares in the market and there are 500 people who want to buy them, then share price goes up, 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 up till the time bubble bursts, till the time people realize that this is not what they want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Industry is right now in the similar situation. The talent pool which everyone is looking at is the experienced talent pool. Why experienced talent pool? Because there are a lot of startups which have come in, technology startups which have come in, and those technology startups are having funding, and since they are having funding, they want to hire experienced people. When they are hiring experienced people, those positions are going vacant because they are offering 40% to is average. If you see
Okay.
the talent market right now,
Mm-hmm.
it is like 60 to 100% increase is something which anyone is offering. My industry colleagues can uh, endorse me on this. I see. Uh, so, thing is, this is a vicious cycle, and today or tomorrow, people are going to come out of that vicious cycle. There are companies which are smart who have understood that this is a vicious cycle. There is no need of getting into it. And most of the large organizations, if you see, they have already moved or they have already started looking at campuses and the fresh talent and the people who have lost their jobs during pandemic. That is how it is going to happen. It is because this kind of environment which is there in the market is not sustainable for business in a long run.
Okay. Good. Good. So thank you, Mr. Harjeet. Thanks for addressing the queries also. So let's pass on the baton now to Mr. Inbarajan Palaniswamy. He happens to be, in fact, the business head of Verse Innovation, and we know this organization better with their very familiar brand name called Daily Hunt. Over to you, Mr. Inbarajan, please.
Thank you, Professor. Before I sort of move on to what I want to sort of deliver, I would sort of second the thought of Harjeet, that I think I would have second the thought of Dharam on two things. I think on Harjeet, yes, it's a huge opportunity as far as the academia is concerned. I think this disruption of sort of incubating students at the academia level is already started. So it will only get bigger, better in the coming days. Two, on the on Mr. Dharam's statement is that I think this is a huge opportunity from a digital access standpoint. I think from an academia, the access towards students, I think the technology has enabled it. Students at a click of a button, they get their education. Industry, I mean, I think Mr. Harjeet and I think Dharam spoke enough. I think there is an excess of global talent. And I think Mr. Dharam also sort of emphasized the fact that I think we are going to experience the disruption of gig economy in India, and while it is in a very nascent stage, but I think that's going to be huge in India in the coming days. Really enjoyed the session till about now, but I think what I'm going to actually put forward will be, maybe I want to structure in maybe three different buckets. I think at an organization level, how, what, and what future has to sort of unfold is. Second thing from an academia level, and probably from the student side, I'm going to sort of put my views in three different buckets. I think people spoke enough as far as how pandemic had sort of caught us unprepared. But at an organization level, I think maybe I'll give you three scenarios: pre-pandemic, during pandemic. I think maybe, and I can safely call we are in the fag end of the pandemic. Maybe post-pandemic would be the right word. But pre-pandemic at an organization level, what we were is we were, I think, by and large, everyone knew that we had a brand called Daily Hunt, and we were in the news aggregation space, content space. We were getting about 240 to 250 million people coming onto the platform and consuming content news in their own language. That's been our USP. That's what the platform is. I think we used to get about 18, 20, 22 minutes coming in from every user used to spend the time on the platform. But I think what happened during pandemic, I think the transformation has been really quick. The founders have been really smart. The management team. What we thought is, how do we utilize this vacuum? How do we utilize this opportunity, and how sort of we could sort of expand into a newer horizons that could sort of help the organization reach the next level. Now, what happened is at the Daily Hunt level, we became social, which means we enable the user to give content, enable the user to get content onto the platform, could follow publisher, could tweet, could comment, could criticize, so on and so forth. We enabled the platform. So as we speak, we are actually servicing close to about 350 million users on a Daily Hunt platform, which means this is slightly more than 50% of the internet population coming onto our platform. We get about close to about 9700 million people coming onto our platform on a daily basis. You'll be wondering what happened is the time spent, the user part of the time spent is about 30 to 33 minutes. Now that's what has actually happened during pandemic. Now, what has actually happened is the platform had enriched the content beyond news, beyond the content, and this is the consumption pattern we were able to enable the user. The second smart thing, what we did at an organization level is we quickly understood that there is a huge vacuum because of few apps which got banned in India, and I think we also had a vision as to what we had to do in the short video space. So we explored into a platform called Josh. I'm sure most of you are aware of Josh. Josh is a short video space app. As we speak, we have crossed about 100 million downloads onto the platform. We get about 115 million monthly active users coming out of platform. The best part is we have 2 billion video views on a daily basis, and we get about 23 minutes as the time spent per user. Part of that is another thing which actually happened great to us at an organization level. And what the future has to unfold for us, I think pre-pandemic we were a single app. During pandemic, we were able to launch another app. I think maybe the future has, we become a family of apps. So the thought process is, how do we get the maximum time share, therefore the mind share, and eventually the revenue share, therefore capture the market share. That's been the thought process from the founders. And I think we are we are poised in a situation where I think we should be able to scale from here. Now that's a encouraging thing which I thought I'll share with the with the audience here. And I think at an academia level, what has actually happened is, having worked closely with most of the academias in the country, largely for recruitment, I think I would sort of second what Mr. Harjit was talking about. Is how does the academia can actually enable, utilize the technology and enable the students in such a way that they are not digitally challenged. Whatever we speak, whatever digital content we have, I think the challenges of recruitment is still existing. At an academia level, while quite a few things have actually changed dramatically pre-pandemic and during pandemic, but I think academia has to evaluate in terms of how can they make the content relevant to the current context. I think Mr. Dharam spoke about unicorns. 2021, I think we have crossed 31, 32 unicorns in the country. I mean, we used to sort of hover anywhere between, we used to sort of celebrate 15, 20, 25. I think in 2021 itself, we've crossed 31. And I think, what is actually happening is technology has become the enabler. You take any sector, you take an education sector, you take an agriculture sector, you take the, healthcare sector, every sector has sort of transformed. And I think technology is going to take a center stage. Mr. Harjeet will have to, accept the fact, because Jio has been the backbone of, the 2016, what happened to us, that gave us the internet penetration push that I think the most of the companies are benefiting from that. And I think finally, my thoughts and my words to the student side is that I think, since because the environment is currently is very dynamic, technology is taking center stage, people have to look at having digital skills, digital knowledge. While, I think, Professor was talking about IQ, EQ, it's very important, what we understand from the organization level. How do I mean, because we have done enough as far as industry integration is concerned, there's been enough corporate, arrangements, but I think evaluating the students in terms of equipping themselves on the digital side of it through integrations is something which, I want to sort of leave on the student side of it, Professor. I'll be happy to take more questions, if at all I'm allowed later. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Inbarajan. Thank you very much. In fact, Daily Hunt has actually been a great story, and so has been Josh. And if I just out of inquisitiveness, we have to ask a question that do you see the direction, the strategic direction in which Daily Hunt is headed changing anytime soon, or would the direction continue to be the same?
So, I mean, in fact, as I mentioned, pre-pandemic, we used to be a single app, Professor. We used to be in the news aggregation space. And I think as we speak, we have a couple of apps. We have Daily Hunt and we have Josh, but we are in the process of making more apps. There is going to be a family of apps. And the thought process from the founders is very clear that we're going to capture time share and the mind share of the user. Now, how do I get into a newer genre, newer content, newer space that someone is going to come to my platform to consume news and content? Plus, he's going to spend some time on the entertainment space, or probably how do we equip the user on multiple genres on Josh? Plus, the more apps which is going to come in the space. Since because these projects are in the stealth mode, I'm not revealing much, but I think the thought process and the strategy as far as the organization is concerned, we're getting into a family of apps, Professor.
Okay, good. That helps. Definitely helps. Thank you, Mr. Inbarajan. Thank you very much indeed. So, Mr. Rajiv Williams, so let me pass on the baton to you. You're coming from Jindal Stainless Steel. You're the corporate head of CSR that way. I'm sure your perspective will be different to that extent. So, over to you, Mr. Rajiv Williams, please.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rajneesh, and for inviting me to speak today. But here I'm going to speak to you on a different genre completely, because I see there's a lot of, obviously the HR guys are here and they are talking about the challenges that have been faced post-pandemic, and really have a bit of a problem with this post-pandemic word, because post-pandemic is not really post-pandemic. We have to live with the pandemic. It's like somebody sneezing, it's influenza, it's something like that. Only thing is that adaptation of technologies in this new environment in which we are existing, whether it's to do with Delta Airways or Qantas, which is starting off its direct flights from Australia to Delhi, or be it something to do with the agriculture piece of climate change, COP26, another couple of days, and we're going to be speaking about lots to do with how are we going to mitigate the problems of carbon dioxide emissions. I come from Jindal Stainless Limited group of companies, and we manufacture, we are doing a lot of corporate social responsibility, for which I am basically heading for the group, and we also make stainless steel. So with that, I think to start with, my take is going to be focusing more importantly on the challenges that we faced last year, this year, during the pandemic, and how there have been changes, both in terms of our corporate social responsibility, our beyond business responsibility. And I'm so happy to hear the speakers who have spoken before me on the various challenges as far as the recruitment was concerned. but also the challenge of the opportunities that have been created. I'm sure, like your management school is churning out wonderful students to become managers. They have to think out of the box that once they graduate from your institution, how they're going to be innovatively employed and opportunity that is being given to them in various corporate houses. Now, here, I would like to just stand about the fact that whatever you do has got to be an initiative that has to be taken now so that you can be employed and maybe start off your own entrepreneurship, become an entrepreneur yourself. Don't depend too much. I mean, see the reduced opportunities that are coming up. Reduced opportunities for jobs. Unemployment rate is going up by the day. Reverse migration has taken place. We're not only talking about you guys sitting over here as students. We're also talking about the larger community who have to really realize the fact they don't come out of the business schools, yet they have to be employed. How do we get them gainfully employed? If you don't have those jobs available to give them on track, you have to make sure that the skill sets that your institutions and your like institutions and many students do not have that capability, give them the skill sets, that they find these opportunities in their own places of residence, in their own villages, in their own communities. And I will just say that one great opportunity which came by, IIM Ahmedabad, IIT Kharagpur, IIM Ahmedabad, McKinsey's left everything, started working last couple of years with farmers. How to create a business opportunity for the farmers, and we keep hearing the slogan of doubling the farmer's income. How do we double the farmer's income? Do we double it by increasing their productivity levels? Or do we tweak it by brains like you guys sitting around there, innovatively finding out how to reduce the input costs, how to create some sort of digital transfers of funds. So digital economy has to grow, and that platform is available. When demonetization took place, there were such challenges about the farmers. There were such challenges of how do we leverage the cash is not available. That's the time when one of our partners who was doing this work was one of the only partners who was being contacted by many of digital transfer of funds that really created a buzzword at that time during demonetization. And the same thing happened last year when the first wave came in of pandemic. I think Jindal Stainless Limited has started off the oxygen concentrators and the oxygen processes in their plants and shipping that across the country. At the grassroots level, even the farmers who were striving hard to make sure that their crops are not lost. So this partner of ours had already worked out with Delhi kitchens, with kitchens across the NCR region at least, giving them fresh vegetables through these farmers. So it was a business opportunity for the farmers. And everything worked out such beautifully that at least those partners of ours or those farmers who were aligned to our partner did not face this problem. And this was a model which Niti Aayog picked up also. And Niti Aayog during the aspirational districts have really taken on this project of ours of agriculture on the 12 districts in across the country, most importantly around northern India. So I'm just saying that you are the young minds. You have to find ways and means. Don't be disappointed if you don't get jobs. Create some opportunities like my colleague, our speaker before me in the Jan, right? In the Jan spoke about, okay, I'll just call you in there spoke about this beautiful apps that are coming up. You young guys have got a little brain, not people like us. You are the ones who are going to make that change. You are the ones who are going to find new models, new methods of making sure that not only you survive, but the community survive. It's an inclusive growth, inclusive development. When we're talking about all this, we must understand inclusivity remains at the bottom of the pyramid where you can really touch the lives of those communities who are wanting. Digitalization is great, but do we have energy? Do we have that kind of bandwidth to reach that last man, that last connect, to work on various processes. So please think about it logically. And all this discussion, whether it's HR or whether it is to do with any other thing in the departments that we have, it's the people first. And that's what CSR is all about. Triple bottom line, the people, planet, and profit. How do you make profits unless you take care of the people? The first P is critical. It's most important. You, as students, are most important. And if you can be motivated adequately to start various kind of activities to be employed or otherwise, but you can make a change. There was this climate change thing that is going on. I think yesterday, day before yesterday, a lovely video was floating around from somebody, some young girl from South India, who's come up with an app on climate change. I mean, she was just scratching her brains like Gutenberg and others, but she was from Bangalore or someplace, I think, in South India, and she's come up with an app to focus on climate change for the grassroots level workers. That's innovation. Innovation can be thought of in so many ways. And the students that you are actually addressing today, I'm sure are listening, are young guys, first year students who have got time before they really graduate and then move on to the industries. Ours is a large industry. Ours still has vacancies. We HR guys, I mean, not me, but my team of HR community still has vacancies in the country. And so do most of the larger companies have. You don't find that quality. It's not only the question of giving education in closed door classrooms. You've got to move out. For internships that you've got to make on your various projects, we also offer internships, both in the mainstream business as also in CSR. And there are so many people who are wanting to come into the internship. That's one way of really motivating your students to come into the industry fold also. So I think, all these things, when we put together and we see that opportunities will come your way, vacancies are available, the quality, the skill sets is something which is lacking. I'm not talking about you from Ford School. There are so many schools that have come up and mushroomed in the country. So many universities, top 100, top 10, top 5, and best of the universities. Unemployed youth. Why? I think there's a mismatch because what the industry needs is not what probably some of the schools are ready to give. That exercise is already on, and I'm glad that the government of India has taken on through various formats. And there is an industry direct connection with the schools where they are tweaking the syllabi. For example, in our case, for stainless steel fabrication in the Capital Skills Council, which is part of the NSDC, there is nothing to do with stainless steel fabrication. You're having carbon steel fabrication, all right, but not stainless steel. That's got a different kind of format. Make whatever machine, I'm talking about the technical part. So there was a requirement of us creating that kind of a syllabi for creating students who are rather from either the bottom of the pyramid or the high end, by having chairs of excellence at various technical institutions, of seeing as to how to work on stainless steel products. I mean, per capita stainless steel is growing. It's really across the world. It's huge. In India, it's still pretty low. But there's low per capita, but it's growing. It's increasing. So I'm not only talking about just the domestic, utensils and the kitchens, but I'm talking about railways. I'm talking about airspace. I'm talking about defense sector. I'm talking about cladding. I'm talking about airports, the infrastructure. They're all now preferring stainless steel vis-a-vis carbon steel, longevity, green product, etc., etc. But there was no cross curricular for stainless steel, so we've solved all that. Now that's where an opportunity comes for you all to how to really embrace such kind of new innovative even solutions towards your own pathways that you're going to be adopting soon after you graduate. Learning is a still process. I mean, I'm probably the oldest around here with you guys sitting around, but the passion is still there. I carry on only because of the sake of that we can make a difference in the lives of the community, young people, elderlies, and whoever. And corporate social responsibility, which I take care of, sustainability, which I take care of for the group, is exciting. It's exciting from various angles, from education, healthcare, women empowerment, community development, infrastructure, business and human rights, rights of community. And I'm glad that, I'm being able to speak about this because we at Jindal Stainless Limited have got a foundation in which we are doing our projects with the community. That is this foundation headed by Mrs. Deepika Jindal. She's also managing director of the lifestyle products, that is the Jindal Stainless Limited Lifestyle. That's another group company. And she's created a lot of good infrastructure, including what you're seeing it if you cross the Ames flyover. That all those stainless steel stuff that is there, that's part of Jindal architecture. All the claddings that are coming up in the airport is Jindal Stainless Limited architecture. There are a lot of railways coaches. There are a lot of defense equipment, including the steel bowsers, stainless steel bowsers. They are coming from us. So it's a journey, and you, young people, and your faculty, I hope is listening, that try and see if you can send your students for internship. Have a look at it, how they can get dovetailed, and you will be able to contribute hugely. I'll pause here, and then I think I'll take on questions later. Thank you very much.
Mr. Rajiv, thank you very much. Thank you for the very, passionate talk that you delivered. And since you are speaking and you actually come from a manufacturing sector, it's a very, core sector to that extent of our economy. This skill set issue that you are actually speaking about, do you see it more happening at a blue collar worker level? Do you see it happening across levels? Do you see it happening more at ITI level? It's a very open-ended question. If you could share your opinion on the same.
Sure.
Because normally, for example, these people might be from B school and, they might be targeting MBA jobs. But then having said that, that is not the end of this employment. Our employment is actually across levels, starting from ITI to undergraduates to graduates to postgraduates.
Brilliant. I mean, that question, whether it's the blue collar, the white collar, should they get engaged in the manufacturing process? I come from the army. I took voluntary retirement almost 16 years ago. And I come from the hardcore infantry soldier who served in Siachen to Glacier to Dras and Kargil operations, all 1971 Indo-Pakistan War. We're celebrating 50 years. Blue collar and white collar is in the industry, all right. In the army also, if we start thinking about the same area, we will not become leaders. We'll become managers exclusively. Today, the manager has to graduate to the leadership level. Therefore, if it is a white collar guy, he has to take on those he has to be skilled adequately himself to manage the blue collars and the grassroots workers. So that's why I'm trying to say is that earlier stand was that, excuse me, I am from IIM Ahmedabad. I am from so-and-so business school. And I think I only need to sit in my cozy corners of the offices and hope that the third P, that is the profit piece, will grow and the bottom lines will increase. It's not so today. You have to understand your own supply chain well enough, and you can only do that when you get out of your office. You have to be skills sets should be with you even for communications. You have to be savvy with social media. You have to be totally involved in digital media. How can you do that if you're only thinking and focusing on managerial skills? You have to be really equipped. And the earlier you equip yourself, the better, because you get enmeshed into your customer relationships. You get enmeshed, especially if you're in the manufacturing sector, when you go and occupy lands from people, from communities, and throw them out and say that my industry is going to be coming up. Is that your responsibility towards the community? That you will take care of various bottom, the survey that you carry out, the baseline survey, you have to mitigate their problems by education, healthcare, women empowerment, as I shared, skill training. So that when you are establishing an industry in a remote area of Orissa, where you've gone to the tribal areas, do you think they'll have the skill sets to be employed in your company? Nope. You have to get that manpower from across the country who are skilled, including drivers, including the people who are going to be working on your blast furnaces. Because you don't have the skill, it's your responsibility to train them, to equip those local people, that migration does not take place, and over 10 years, 15 years, you will be able to adequately skill the local community, the local people to be employed in your own corporations. Otherwise, what will happen? Lockouts. The biggest challenge in a greenfield project is the lockout problem. If you don't start like Tata's, they work years ahead before they come on occupation of land, and land acquisition processes start. Unlike some of the others who say that, okay, I'm just going, I'm going to be paying X amount as per the ERN policy, R&R policy of the state government, as we will do the compliance piece of the central government, and we can pay compensation. And excuse me, that's my land. I'm establishing my factory over here. Excuse me, just move out. What will happen? Not in today's context, boy. Today's context is that you have to keep them with you. Otherwise, they will do dharna, they will do lockouts of your factory, and one day lockout for a manufacturing company of a steel manufacturing or a power sector is millions of dollars gone. So that is the bottom line that you should understand. What happened in Maruti? What happened in Sterling? What happened in this highway of connecting Mumbai? All that corridor. What's happening today in Jewar Airport? You have to keep the communities with you if you want your business to survive. Tata's is amongst the only 5 companies who are still existing of the top 100 companies 100 years ago. All have disappeared. Only 5 companies, including IBM, Tata's, and I think there are 3 other companies who are still surviving because of good ethical practices, I guess. And though Jindal Stainless Limited is good 50 years old, but we've got to do a lot of learning from our colleagues, our industry colleagues, and that's what the integration is all about. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Ranjit.
Thank you, Mr. Rai. Very aptly put. In fact, communities are extremely important at the end of the day. Otherwise, the businesses won't survive. I agree with you 100% for sure. So let's pass on the baton now to Mr. Srinivas Reddy. Srinivas Reddy is from MetLife. He happens to be the HR head over there, the director of HR. Over to you, Mr. Srinivas Reddy. We can't see your video, but I'm sure you can hear us, right?
Yeah, I can. Thank you so much,
Good.
Prof. Apparently, I'm on there's an issue with my net and there is a low connectivity issue, so I'll continue to be on audio, and I don't want this to disrupt. My perspective, before I go ahead, let me give a brief background about MetLife. MetLife is a large insurance company. They're predominantly a market leaders in life insurance, and have been present for about 150 plus years. In India, what we do is we manage shared service centers and operate global capability centers here. We have about 3 centers, approximately 4,000 people. And we have a couple of centers outside India, Mexico, and Europe, and other regions. I think there's a lot's been said on the topic, and thanks for putting me on the last, because I don't have much to add amongst my panelists that have absolutely added great points, and I don't think I would just disagree with any of it. And I was thinking the example that Harjeet was giving on Delta, and it's so true and so real, from a situation standpoint, and it'll fit in everywhere that we are in. And there is no post-pandemic world. I believe people will realize to this more and more as we keep moving ahead. Touch wood, knock on the wood. I hope there is no third wave, but it doesn't matter. What I mean is the world is going to keep moving ahead as the way we are going. I don't think there's going to be any change in that. The intervention of academia is more than today than ever before. and I guess that's gonna only go higher as we keep moving ahead. I mean, there has been a situation that in our company we have a large, close to 1,000 people tech workforce. Some of the great, work that we do from a product, service, both maintenance and service standpoint. Um, it's the talent that we had in so far. We've been in the country for about 15 years. The talent we've been able to groom so far that was there even maybe like 2 years back uh, is no longer good. I mean, we just continuously upskilling them back to back again and again, period. And I think this gap is gonna increase more and more. And the reason the dearth of talent that we see today, is not going to be there forever. It'll be there for some time for sure. What is that time? Only an academia, could fill up that gap. Nobody else. And if we continue to have a million engineers getting passed out, and of which only maybe 100,000 are ready for the roles to be taken up, it'll always be an issue. But I guess of the million that are passing out, if there are 500,000 who are going to be ready to take on the roles, I think this issue will get killed in the next couple of months, or few months, or a year, maybe, or 2 years. And I guess the point that someone spoke in the panel is about the gap, in terms of compensations, right? I mean, somebody was asking, how much should a full stack developer get paid, with a 5 years work experience? I said, I wish you would have asked me this question maybe 2 years back, or year back. I would have able to tell you. Unfortunately today I just don't know. And I remember, I think Bhavesh from Ola tweeted saying that there will be a time that we will have to probably soon outsource the work from India to San Francisco. And that was not a joke. Somebody who's a 10, 12-year work experience, product, worked in the product and full stack, experience. I think they were getting paid slightly more than what engineer in San Francisco, Bay Area, anywhere in the Bay Area was getting paid. And that's true. And I wouldn't say it's a 2000, at the time of 2000 when the .com burst happened. I wouldn't call it like that, but I guess it's much bigger than that. That's the way I would put it. One, two, and I guess this gap will only get better if both industry and academia is going to work together to solve it. There is only so much. When I say so much, and I'm talking on behalf of the large IT companies in the country, and we absolutely capture 40% of the global market from a service industry standpoint. I don't think they'll be able to solve it. I won't think they'll be able to, cut the mountain. I mean, somebody has to be like a Manji to go ahead and, start cutting the mountain just by himself. And it's going to take years for them to do it. So I don't think that's going to be possible to fill this gap. It's very, very important. And this is the time. I mean, I guess there are a lot of countries in the world that are really looking up to India. MetLife present in about 48 countries across the globe. I've been on calls and most of the CIOs across the globe in different regions. Everyone's looking up to India because this is the only country apparently who's got ability to scale, right? And go up with the complexity that we have, right? There are a lot of countries out there who have great complexity. I think be it Israel or many other countries. I mean, not just Israel, but many other countries have got ability to have very complex skill, but nobody has scale and nobody can beat. I think the talent powerhouse reality is going to be, as much true now than ever before. And I think we should go completely, hands down and grab this opportunity. And it's very important. Timing couldn't get better than what we are today. So I think I'll take a pause there. I think enough has already been said. I wouldn't take much time, but those are my 2 cents, on the topic and where we are. Thank you, Prof.
Thank you, Srinivas. Thanks a lot. In fact, in continuation of that, and probably slightly related to that, since, and in fact, not only you, Srinivas, everybody has been speaking about, academia, so on and so forth. And in fact, it's a question which I actually wanted to ask to the very esteemed panel. Srinivas, you also, and probably if somebody else also wants to pip in. See, normally, you have academia, which is fundamental traditional academia, regular B schools, which actually has a lot of inertia. A student comes in, he spends some 2 years in a B school, and then he goes out, right? And at the same time, you have a lot of non-traditional academia in the sense that you got Coursera's of the world, the EDX of the world, you got so many online learning platforms out over there, which seems to be so much more in touch with the market reality and with the skill sets which seems to be ruling the roost in the market as compared to probably what a traditional academia has, which might be, having a lot of inertia, so on and so forth. So, do you actually see the traditional academia learning from this non-traditional academia? And probably is there a lesson or two, or maybe it is that traditional academia, it is only a matter of time before it just passes out? It's a very open-ended question that I'm asking. So probably this question is open to everybody on the panel.
Yeah, maybe I'll take a punt at it and I'll leave it to the rest of my panelists here. And I was reading it somewhere that we're in 2021. I think today the electric vehicles intervention, I'm talking mostly four-wheelers, or probably less than 1% or maybe here and there. And by 2026, we're going to have approximately close to 50 to 60% of the vehicles running on the road, which are going to be completely electric. Now that's a huge shift, transformation, needs a lot of ecosystem to be built up. I think it's gonna same thing happen even in education. If the academia is not gonna step up and fill up that gap and ensure that they supply the talent with the right skill sets, I think we may pose a serious challenge out there. I'm not sure how it will shape up, and that's the reason. Otherwise, a Coursera is not a new idea, right? It's a very normal idea. I mean, it's a very beaten up idea, right? But it just got clicked is because of this gap. I mean, had that not been there, and there are many, right? The Newton schools of the world and other things. There are many that are coming up, and it'll continue to come up. And the reason is because of the gap that's there. And I think academia has to really play a very, very big role. And if they don't, I think it'll be like what I just said, how the vehicles are going to be transforming, and I think we'll see a transformation there. I'll have the rest of my panelists opine on that.
May I attempt?
Yes, please.
Look, what happens is when we are children, we are carefree, and our mothers actually pick the food and feed us so that we develop the habit of eating. It is not that we don't want to eat, we don't care to eat. When I was in the college, I was also not interested in studying. I was interested in extracurricular activities. And that is how most of the students are. Maybe there are students who want to only study, but there are students who want to study and who want to, like, after 10th or 12th or even graduation, that itself is a pain. In MBA, I got some sense that, yeah, I want to learn, where it was my urge. So when you say non-traditional academia, which is there, when the person wants to learn something, then that non-traditional academia comes in. And traditional academia, so we need something in hybrid, where your mom teaches you this is how you eat. And once you know that, then this entire thing starts working. Now, it is not that there are organizations which are not doing it. I have seen certain colleges, what they are doing is they are partnering with industry, and like, while you are studying, at the same time you are working also. So in a 2-year period, in fact, I have seen one of the colleges, what it was doing was it was asking people to run a startup and supporting them with all kinds of supports. And other people, like creating a group of 5 people to run a startup, funding that startup, giving them ideas, letting them fail and again stand up. Now, when people go through this kind of experience, or what Rajiv was talking about, internships. So long-term internships, say if you are there in a company for 6 months and doing internship, then you are contributing also, you are also learning the ways of working. So that kind of deep integration is something which is important. And once that happens, so problem is, when we start talking about modern academia, we actually say these modern tools, Coursera and LinkedIn Learning and things like that, we generally write off what traditional colleges are doing. We should not do that. Look, fundamentals are very, very important for somebody to stand up on its feet. McDonald's has chefs. Those chefs can only make burgers for McDonald's. They don't know anything else. They don't know what the ingredients are. So when academia, this system of academia we invented over a long period of time, we have tried to perfect it. There are certain things we need to improve. That is a continuous process, but we should not write that off, because until unless those fundamentals are proper, things are not going to work. Thing is, I step forward coming to a hybrid so that we get a solution which is comprehensive rather than say either choose this or choose that. It cannot be extremism. That's what my thought is.
Brilliant. Maybe
attempt?
I can, yeah, maybe I can request probably Mr. Dharam or Mr. Inba or Mr. Rajiv also to pitch in, please.
Yes. So can I attempt here?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. So I have a little bit different thought
Mhm.
because I don't see the end of one journey and the start of the new journey. It's a completely a process of evolution, and the entire thing is evolving. Okay. So traditional versus non-traditional academia at this very juncture, I don't find any kind of the discussion and debate is required, because we are in the continuous process of the evolution, and these are the different stages of the evolution. Something has come up which has actually metamorphosed, and they have just jumped to the one more step. But what is the fundamental which is changing? And this is important for each and everyone to understand here. Previously, what was the purpose of the academia? To teach, and the student's purpose was to study. Now the purpose is shifting from the student point of view, that we are just trying to learn, not only to study. And this is the biggest shift what I am finding. This thing, the learning is happening. Okay. And in the process, you find that there are variety of the base of the way the entire academy actually work. I must tell you this. I think one of the experimentation what we are doing here. There is a university called the Sri Biskarma Skill University, which is going to be the first technical university of the country in the terms of the national university kind of things. And since early days of the inception, we are associated with them, and the entire model is like this. I think 70, 20, 10%, 70% internship which happens at the with the company. So they are on the job training, they are learning. So I find this thing, what is happening from day zero, they are industry ready. Normally, when you bring any person either from the management institute or the technical institute, they take their 10 to 11 months time actually to come up to the industry level kind of things. This is the gap. Okay. And whether you tell about the traditional academia or the say the non-traditional academia, this gap needs to be bridged, because the theory is being taught to the people, and that's why the study is coming. But learning is happening or not happening, this is the bigger question. How we can have the more and more connect with the both the demand and supply. And I find the thing there's a gap is here. So demand is from the industry side, and the supply is from the academia side. Between this, what is missing actually? And if you try to connect this missing link, I think that actually gives us a better ecosystem. And currently and traditionally, what we are finding, like a thing, that even the sorry to say this thing, students are adopting the new ways of the learning, but are faculty ready for that kind of things? Are they adopting the new ways of learning and the new ways of teaching both? That's the way we need to also solve it. Because sometimes back, I will just give you 2 examples and then I will close my thought. I was doing my leadership course in the Wharton. I was just trying to compare the entire academia of the Wharton versus the Indian academia. And interesting piece, what I realized is, I think most of my faculties were the board members of the good company. So they knew what is going to happen in future. And accordingly, they were preparing their students. My strategy professor was the board member of the Google. He knew this thing, what is the meaning of the connected strategy. Okay. And that is the biggest value, what is he's building within the student community. Here you come to in India, come back, most of the time you find the thing is the people who are teaching them, who are shaping them, who are grooming the students, they are far away from the ground realities. And that is the one of the gap I find the thing that is there. Second way, like if I think I did my executive coaching course, and previously it used to happen in a very formal environment where the faculty come, they teach you, and then the entire thing shifted to the digital mode. And I found the thing learning was much and more faster and better. Of course, when I meet with someone in person, that connects actually gives me the different ways of the understanding the things. Okay, that is the miss point. But I find the thing that we need to find a balance between the both. And what Harjeet was saying, I completely echo with his thought. Okay, we cannot take the 2 extremes. There has to be a hybrid model, which allows us to operate more seamlessly in a better manner. Thanks.
In fact, just adding to what Dharam said, look, I understand not all faculty can be say from the board of directors. I also, when I went to INSEAD, my faculty was not from the industry. They were hardcore faculty, but the good part with that faculty was that they were working with the industry on projects. So they were aware. And that is what we should do when we are thinking of students. Like right now you have Inba Rajan. You can ask a couple of your faculty members to work with him on a project. If he is ready to give a stipend, that is good. Otherwise, also, even if he allows that, means just go for it. The kind of things you will learn, you will be able to do much more for students, and you will be adding a lot of value to yourself. So, if that kind of say theory plus little bit of practical exposure, how to apply theory starts happening, then it will be good for faculty, it will be good for a student. And that is one thing which definitely makes a difference.
Yes, sure. Yeah, Mr.
Can I
Inba.
chip in?
Yes, please, by all means.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I've been hearing this argument and debate that is going on. Gap is something which needs to be plugged. I mentioned that during my initial remarks also, the gap between the industry and, of course, the school. Also the gap now, I think, within the school with this pandemic. I mean, you have to be equipped as your professors, as your faculty members, how to adapt yourselves to the new changing environment of education. As my colleague panelist Harjeet mentioned, that the industry needs to, of course, come forward and interact with the students. It's not only the students coming to interact during internship programs, but during the initial phases also, the industry has to come in and converse with you. And maybe at this time when there is no physical contact, that's really, really tough for the students and for the faculty and for the business. When there's no physical contact, you've got to find solutions to this problem. Today, at least the industry guys can be available to you, even if from remote areas of our plants across, or Tatas or Aditya Birla, whoever. Let them come and talk to the students. Let them come and interact with them on this platform, on the e-platform. if you can't have the physical contact. And that's what I think will plug this gap of the students themselves in today's environment. And I think it'll have a great impact when they come on internship programs with the industry to fill that gap and, of course, to develop programs which are centric to the industry, to the type of industry, especially when we're talking about the manufacturing and the extractive industry vis-a-vis a service industry. Service industry has got certain different challenges. The manufacturing and the extractive industry have got very different challenges. So that gaps need definitely to be filled up, and we've got to start moving. And your students have to be, of course, understanding this, that this has come to stay. It's more of maybe comfort zone, maybe more input, output is going to definitely increase, but it is a new change during the post-pandemic period of integrating industry associations. Have you got in touch with industry associations? Not only direct between Jindal Stainless or Jindal Group of companies with Four School or for the other management schools? Have we tied up with the CIIs and have we tied up with the ASSOCHAMs or the PhD Chambers of Commerce or whatever? They will be able to give you the best, I think, for the faculty to be enriched, both at the faculty level as also the student level. Thank you.
Good, thank you.
So if I may add, Professor, I think if you look at the need gap analysis, we have actually we've been an evolving country. We've moved away from a predominant agriculture-led economy to what it was, predominantly production manufacturing economy, to what we are right now is it's more of a service economy, which is contributing very larger from a GDP standpoint. So therefore, what's actually happening is the skills which are required from what it was and what we are right now is going to be the gap. Two, if you look at from the consumer, if you look at from the student standpoint, now the language is completely changed. They've moved away from a learning and eventually they are looking at a placement. Now, if you I think most of the academia will sort of admit this. I think be it the top of the universities or probably the 40,000 colleges across the country, I think that this is the first question which is coming when a student is actually approaching an academia, that what is your placement ratio? So we are moving away from learning, and while learning is part of it, but I think it is morely focused towards placement. Now that's another change from the behavior standpoint on the services, and it is predominantly services led economy. Now how do we fill the gap is something which is the question. So if you look at the traditional or the conventional way of learning, it is still going to continue. I mean, if I can sort of give an example and sort of second the thought of what Harjeet was mentioning, it is the Byju's of the world, which was the technology enabler of education, is going and acquiring a platform called Akash, who was more to do with a physical center. And what was they doing? They were actually doing test prep. And he is a gentleman who was actually in the online education. So therefore the traditional medium is going to continue, but I think is there a way that we could actually understand what is the new technology or what is the new learning methodologies have come, can be sort of inculcated right from the K-12 stage. It is not at the B school stage. It is not at a maybe higher education stage. Maybe can be incorporated from the K-12 stage. Then I think we're going to have a very large solution as far as this unemployment is concerned.
Good. Thank you. Vinita, I think how much time do we have? We have time till 1 o'clock, right?
Yeah. We have
Okay.
time. Yeah.
So,
Yes, 101.
so it's already 1 o'clock now. It has
Yeah.
been a great discussion all throughout. And, let me not try summarizing the opinions of everybody, because I know that the discussion has actually been great. I would not be doing justice in trying to summarize the discussion. But yes, definitely before I sign off and before I pass off the baton back to Vinita, I would definitely want to convey my very deep appreciation, also my deep gratitude also for all the eminent panelists to give their time, to give their opinion, very valuable, inputs that they gave, their viewpoints, their professional advice, and their outlook that they share. And it has actually been a very fruitful discussion. So thank you to all of you on a good Saturday afternoon. And Vinita, I pass on the baton back to you, please. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Rajneesh. Actually, this session was very insightful in terms of, when we were discussing about the bridging of the gaps and leveraging technology, and also building up, the CSR initiatives, how the students have actually a great opportunity to, build their, in fact, the combination of the IQ, EQ, and the digital quotient. And the way Mr. Dharmrakshit said also that the workplace has actually the industrial revolution from 1.0 to 4.0 is actually the work home to home transformation that has actually come up. Is definitely we will be missing the socialization, but actually the we have a advantage of access to the global talent that we can have. So it's actually talking about the breaking the stereotyping, and the students have to play a bigger role now to break the stereotypes. So also to remarkable, sentences said by Mr. Harjeet Khanduja ji that, the kind of stories that he said, actually, if kind of a delta kind of a thing can take up, make changes within 15 to 20 days, it is actually a very challenging thing that the industry needs to adopt and think in the future that how it can adapt to the changing situations, because change is the law of life. So if you have if you make changes, you actually survive. So that's the survival of the fittest. So the demand today is that. And also how the best example was how Netflix survived and the Blockbuster actually fell off from the market. So and to quote Mr. N. Barajanji, and it's actually during the pandemic has actually opened up gateways for digital platforms to to many things. It could be content creation, it could be how to increase the time of the people, the consumption time, the content absorption time. So all this has to have a combination of the mind share and the time share is something which is actually a good takeaway from the meeting. Now, to quote Mr. Rajiv Williams, of course, the CSR, integration with the industry, and also for the students to fill that gap to, work, towards climate change, and how to leverage technology and connect the, people and the planet to and the profit. That is something very, that's a good takeaway for all of us. And to quote Mr. Srinivas Reddy, of course, the gap is actually, so the talent powerhouse that we have right now is actually, across the globe, as well as leveraging from the digital content and digital technology that needs to be integrated, and giving the universities and the colleges, an opening or to work closely with the industry. That will actually be a great benefit for the students to come up, to acquire the global talent. That is the biggest challenge that we have right now. So I would like to thank everyone, all the speakers, and it's been a wonderful session, and we look forward to more such sessions and insightful topics going further. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Professor Rajneesh
Thanks.
for managing it very well. It was a good session. Yeah. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Rajneesh, very nice moderation.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much. It's a
Nice
pleasure
meeting you,
having you
Dharam,
here.
Thanks, Harjit.
here.